Welcome back to Flashpoint. Let's bring in this morning's roundtable to talk about the Detroit story. Can we manage Detroit's story to the outside world, especially if we can't even all agree on exactly what that story is? I have a number of storytellers with me this morning. Columnist Rochelle Riley is here from the Detroit Free Press. Great to have John Mason back with us from WGPR and Mason in the Morning. Unfortunately, you're not busy with the playoffs, so you have time to be with us this morning, John. Nolan Finley, editorial chief of the Detroit News, is with us, and Anita Jackson from the O Street column and blog at the Free. Great to have you back as well. Rochelle, you wrote a piece, in fact, it was kind of dueling pieces between you and Luther Keith this past week. Luther joined with a number of Detroiters who were pretty upset. I don't want us to dissect Dateline again, but to the broader point of how we are, whether we're too sensitive. I get the feeling you think we're a little too sensitive about what goes out from Detroit.
Well, it's not that I think we're too sensitive. I think we have to move past the argument. Was the piece balanced? No. But the bottom line is, as long as we continue to not do anything about the crap that hides our crowns, people are going to look at it. People are going to talk about it. It will become more and more representative of what is Detroit instead of the other things that are here. So rather than have the continual fight about, well, there's more here than that, or look at the waterfront, let's just work on fixing the problems that have been problems for 30 years.
Onita, it was interesting because what I ended up thinking was the people who were very upset and wanted, for instance, Channel 4 to react to it in some way. We can only react to Detroiters. We can't manage the national message, which this went out, of course, to the whole country. And I wondered how much Detroiters really learned from the piece. Most of what that in there, I think a lot of people from Detroit had seen and heard before.
Well, I think you have to look at what the piece was attempting to do. So I think many people are looking for solutions where it wasn't. I don't think it was an attempt to.
What do you think that it was the attempt to?
I think it was a presentation of information, and what I know, people are upset about the incomplete truth. So it told some truth, but not the full context. So, for example, to say when the race riots, plural, they weren't race riots, right? So there were people from the police and such killing others, and what happened there. And then you don't go to 1943, you don't give the complete story. So that's how I interpret it.
It is hard to create.
You don't get the full context.
It is hard to be that full in an hour. But John, it's interesting how often I find myself thinking, everybody seems to be able to find a time to put in a shot of the train station when they come in. Nobody seems to get to Eastern Market on a Saturday morning, or to the DIA, and maybe I'm expecting too much too out of an hour.
Well, ESPN did a piece on me. I tried to take them to the Greektown area. They didn't want to shoot it. And then they didn't do a piece on the Macedonian, who's sitting right there with, who hustled flour and tomato paste and used his brain to change the place downtown. There's Mike Ilitch. He's sitting on billions of dollars and ready to play. So, why Detroit? Why did they do the piece?
I'm curious, though. What did ESPN tell you when you said, I want to show this? What did they say?
Mace, think we're going to go back to the palace. and there were people out there, and by the way, it was St. Patrick's Day, so the streets were full. People were going nuts, and they didn't want to show it. So it's an image that we have to get rid of. But we need politicians who are creative enough to start to just spit the other rhyme.
That's right.
Because this rhyme is not working.
Nolan, one of the really interesting dilemmas here, though, of course, as journalists, journalists really are not hired to be PR arms for the city of Detroit. And
well, to me, it comes down to the definition of news. The news is the unusual, the unexpected. For us, we live here every day. We've lived with this blight for years. We look past the train station when we drive by it. We look past the abandonment and the blight downtown. Someone coming in from out of town, that's the first thing they see.
No longer wallpaper.
Because what's new to us and what's unusual to us are the hopeful things, the gardens in the neighborhoods, the fancy riverfront, the new buildings like CompuWare and Campus Martius Park. They come here, they expect to see those things because all cities have those things. What all cities don't have is the level of blight and abandonment that you see on Main Street in Detroit. But I thought in the end, overall, if you look at this Dateline piece, they got to the real story of Detroit and following the woman around and following some of the others around. And I think the real story of Detroit is the vast number of people who don't give up despite extraordinarily long odds, the people who still have hope, who still believe we can make things happen here, that you can live here and survive and make a better life. And I think you came away from that piece with a sense of that spirit of Detroit.
There was an interesting divide on that, I thought, though, Rochelle. Some people thought, didn't see enough hope maybe in the people that were sort of profiled in it, and felt like, this message is going out really doesn't end up being one of hope. It looks like we're all walking around with a noose in our hand looking for a rafter to throw it over to end it all at any moment because we're all just so glum and down.
Well, again, it's an insider and outsider's view. I think to say that they didn't show any hope is to dismiss this woman he hung the whole piece on, who was taking in young men, who was, struggling to make ends meet for her kids. She is a hopeful figure, but because she's also poor, the one thing that could have saved Chris, and he would not have had as many complaints, somebody was going to complain about everything, is if he talked to any of the well-to-do people who live here because they love Detroit. I'm talking not just people who are, going to work. I'm talking people who are doing very well. Right. There are a lot of well-to-do, middle-class, upper-middle-class people who love this city, who have a choice and don't move. And if he had just talked to them about why they stay.
Kid Rock doesn't count?
Kid Rock, for Kid Rock to call Detroit a ghost town, I'm like, okay, come to Detroit more often. He's in LA, he's in Rochester. I love Kid. I called him the unofficial mayor of Detroit because of his cheerleading, but you can't call Detroit a ghost town if you're not in Detroit every day seeing how many people are down here. And I've watched that number grow every year.
It can be different if you're not a Detroit native. Onita, you're not a Detroit native. Did you find yourself wondering what your family and friends back, you're from the East Coast, what they were thinking? Were you worried about that at all, or is that just overly sensitive?
I didn't care. Generally, I don't care when you have these national things, because I live here every day. I live in Detroit. I walk the streets of Detroit. I ride the bus in Detroit. What was interesting to me, though, when you saw that diminutive piece of positivity at the end of the segment, right, so they showed La Petite Zinc. I was there Wednesday, packed. They were robbed the day before. So I spoke with Catherine Kelly. About that. That place is heavily fortified, but they're here because they want to be. But then she said the police came. She showed me the police report. They came about an hour later. So what is it when the police chief says we want a calm, soothing 911 operators? But no, I don't want a calm, soothing operator. I want a calm, cool police, a cop car to come quickly, right? So never mind. We want them here. And what's the solution to that? People need to stop making stupid 911 calls. Got
to get back. We'll take a quick break. We'll continue with more. This is Flashpoint on Local 4.
Seriously.
Welcome back, Flashpoint. In the roundtable this morning, we're talking about Detroit's story. We were just talking about crime, and during the break, Nolan, I think you made a point here that's an important one. There are too many people. I think that, in fact, my son lives in downtown Detroit. I had his cell phone stolen last week, broke into the car, broke the window. I sent a text message before canceling it that you are killing our city, whoever you are, who stole this. But we've got too many people disconnected from that sense of responsibility, from that sense of, well, I hate to use the word connectedness again, but they're not connected in what it is that so many other people are trying to achieve.
Well, they're connected in different ways. I wrote a piece last week about the tremendous amount of electricity theft and gas theft in the city, and Edison is struggling with what to do about this. You let people have illegal hookups and house burns down, you're the bad guy. You cut them off, you're the bad guy. Yeah. But you have this whole strata of society in Detroit that is outside the system, squatting in homes, stealing electricity and gas, scavenging, can't expect police protection. It really probably is unlike any other city to the degree you see it. And we have to start thinking about how our image is connected to the reality. And there's a reality we want to see that is perhaps more hopeful than reality that people live with every day here.
It's trite, John, but to say that a tale of two cities, in that way, we really are. I think there's two very different experiences going on here. There's people who really do have the time, the wherewithal, the passion to move this city forward, and there are others, reality is different.
Well, you got a non-imaginative, a non-creative government system, from the state to the local. You got to bring jobs in here. I don't want to hear all this crap about, you know, we can't give them this kind of tax break. You better get people in here. Your downtown's just going to fall down if you don't get people in here and put people to work. Half these people walking around with the pants low and hoods on, they want jobs. They just play that on the street. But until we become more creative and stop looking the other way and say what's really happening, people want to go to work. This illiteracy thing that they brought up was garbage. Look, you go to the state of Texas, they got over 40% of students in the Texas schools who can't get past page 2 of a textbook, not to talk about the adults. Same thing in New York. You got over 2 million people who read on a 3rd grade level, but they're not going to New York, shooting in New York. Oh, you got all these people at reading on a 3rd grade level. Then that's the ones on the 3rd grade level. What about the rest of the adults in Manhattan who can't read? Period. So a lot of it is bad imaging, but the non-imaginative, creative, from the governor's house to the mayor's chair in this place, we need jobs.
Sonita, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this didn't just happen. So if you are uneducated, if you are a benighted soul who comes back home to tell a story, right? You need tell the story the way it should be told. And I'll just say, New Detroit had this day-long conference. A lot of us were there, where there were people educating you about telling those stories.
About Detroit story,
and
right.
these videos and the information is on the New Detroit website. I got a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Why didn't they put General Motors in there? $30 million.
There you go.
What happened to that? Why wouldn't you do that? They're putting it back. Why didn't they put it into the piece that they're paid back the loans
Because
as well?
that's not what the piece was about. The piece was about poor Detroit and showing people what they have been talking about, what Detroit is about, but not showing enough. Luther said it in his piece. It was heartbreak and hope, but they showed all the heartbreak and not enough of the hope. I think that the biggest thing is everything that's happening here is happening every place else. The reading problem is not garbage. It's real, but it's national.
Well,
they talk
and
about
Chris
it in Detroit
said
because everything else.
Chris
is
said on this past week when he was here, the day that it aired, that was his real driving force behind this. Detroit's the canary in the coal mine. This is happening all over the place. It just happened to happen here first.
Then
And it
show
happens-
the other places.
And it happens to a greater degree here. It's magnified here. We can't pretend that there's an equal balance of hope and heartbreak in this city. Heartbreak is way up here in terms of the comparison.
I got to get to we got to wrap things up, but we will continue this on a web-only site. Head over to Click on Detroit because that's where we're headed right now. Meet the Press is next. Have a great week. We'll see you next time on Flashpoint.